Buongiorno a tutti. So today we are going to learn how to make fresh pasta from scratch. Okay. So basically there is before and after in your life. After that you will be the ones who know how to make fresh pasta. And if you do so, please invite some Italians over, so you can actually show off all the skills that we are going to teach you, and be sure that you make them cry for being more Italian than they will ever be. Now, when it comes to the pasta dough, there is no actual recipe, guys, in the sense that it's one of those things that is so popular in the country that everybody makes it in a different way. And as a matter of fact, when it comes to the pasta, each sauce demands its own type of shape and even its type of dough. Now, in this case, we are going to put semolina or semola di grano duro and 00 flour. And there is more semolina rather than 00 flour because we want the surface to be rough. The good thing about having a rough surface is that basically it holds the sauce better. First thing first, we put extra virgin olive oil. The extra virgin is what you get when you cold press the olives. So basically this is pure juice of olives. Anything else will be treated with chemicals, and we don't want that. The reason why we put extra virgin olive oil is because we want to put the flavor of olives into the pasta dough. And then to that we put 5 eggs because generally as a reference you have 100 grams of mixed flour, 1 egg. That's the proportion that you keep. As an advice, it's better to put a little bit less flour than needed. The reason being that if your eggs are small or for some reason your dough is a little bit dry, that's a more difficult situation to fix because you have to add water, maybe extra virgin olive oil, while in this case, if you have less flour than needed, you can always add flour, so that's the idea. And now you break the eggs, and often people ask me, how do I knead the dough? Which is kind of a personal question, you know. I think you should ask this after the 3rd date or something, but after all, we met on Tinder, so we can skip the intro, and it doesn't really matter. All you want is to channel your negative energy into something productive. What you do is like you keep on squeezing it between your fingers like this. If you want to know, in the old days what they were doing was creating a well in the center of the table, and then basically in it they were putting the eggs and the olive oil, and then adding the flour from the surrounding area, and you keep on adding flour till basically you are happy with the texture. It's true that at the very beginning it looks sticky, but all you have to do is like you reach for the floury bits, and as soon as it starts to come together like that, it's a good idea if you take it off your hand. When I say your hand is because when you squeeze the dough, it's better if you use just one hand, so it's easy for you to go like that and then change the mode, which is more kind of kneading, and you keep on going like that. So you will see that all the bits and pieces are coming together, and then if we are not too happy with that, if it's still sticky, we can add some flour to it.
What can you use instead of the 00 flour?
Okay, so first of all, it's actually easier to find than you expect. If you go to big supermarkets, there is an Italian section, you know, and I know that it sounds like a secret service flour, that 00 flour, you know, the one licensed to bring flavor. But as a matter of fact, it is something that you can find in the country. Otherwise, you can play with other flour for a simple reason. Flours don't really travel that well from country to country, in the sense that when we say 00, we don't refer only to the type of wheat used, but also, if you like, the power of the machinery used, you know, because it has to be extremely refined, okay? Now, let's say that you do it with plain flour, strong flour, other flours. You always get the pasta in the end. It's a different texture. Personally, I do have to make sometimes a fresh pasta just with plain flour and semolina. The semolina is important mostly for the texture, you know, like, and you might end up with a type of pasta that you like more. Like, for instance, I said to you, oh, at this stage, what you can do is like, you take it out, and you start to work on the surface using your weight against it, okay? And as you can see, so far I didn't add any more flour, just a little bit, because it feels sticky at the moment, at the beginning, just because not all the ingredients are together. And be sure that the container is clean, basically, so that you put all the ingredients in your dough. I was saying, regarding the flour, that will affect mostly the texture, you know, and even though I said that we do like it when it's rough on the surface, that doesn't mean that it's the only way. Now guys, once you've done that, okay, a good thing to do is to let it rest, if you can, maybe in the fridge, cover it in cling film, okay, and that will allow the gluten to be released. So when you work with that, you will find that the dough is actually smoother, easier to work with, and just takes a little bit of patience. Now obviously it's not necessary, we can start actually rolling the pasta right now, but we did it already. So we can take the pasta that we did before, and as you can see, it's quite bright as a color. The gluten has been released, and that's what has an impact on the actual texture and color. Then what you do is, like, you can put a little bit of flour and then you can work it again. Just don't get carried away with the flour. I mean, often we have during the classes this last scene of Scarface moment with flour everywhere, and then it gets very dry. So basically, let the dough talk to you, okay? It's a stress ball, and the texture you want is Play-Doh, okay? It doesn't have to feel dry at all, and it doesn't stick, so there is no reason for me to add any more flour. Now that we have our dough, we are ready to make layers of pasta, so just to make different types of pasta all together. Now, don't worry, I mean, in general in life, don't worry, we are making pasta, honestly. But even if you don't have the pasta machine, all you have to do is to roll it down with a rolling pin. You just start off with a disc of pasta, okay? Now, especially at the beginning, make it a little bit smaller if you're not too sure, just because this way you kind of build up your relationship with the pasta, you familiarize with it, and then the more you get confident, the bigger can be the piece of pasta, because this will make you faster in the sense that you can work more pasta in one go. Now, what I suggest to do is always to put a little bit of flour, push the dough like this to flatten it a little bit. You can even use the rolling pin if you want, and you are ready to feed the machine. Now, in this machine, the thickest is number 6, and you always start from the thickest one. You feed the machine, you can actually push it, and then once it's coated, you don't need to worry about it, because the pasta will be on the pasta machine, and you can take it out like this. Obviously you get sort of a random shape, but you have to embrace randomness in life and take control. The way you take control is by folding the two ends at the end, okay? This way you achieve 3 things that are very important. First, it's a more regular shape. This is the width we want to give to the pasta dough. And also these sides will come smooth because you feed the machine this way, because they are folded. Obviously, I don't change the number on the machine, okay? Because this is twice as thick as before. And we do it again. So, as you can see, is a more regular shape, is the width we wanted, and these sides are smooth. We're making tagliatelle now. So for that we want it a little bit with a bite. So you should stop at number 2, the second last. But before stopping at 2, we actually go midway at 4. So it's less traumatic for the dough, and then we go to number 2. So we do it again, we feed it, and then we go to number 2. Now, just for you to know, this was just eggs and flour before we decided it to be almost a piece of fabric. How beautiful it is. Now, we are putting flour on both sides because we are doing tagliatelle. For other types of pasta, sometimes you might want to keep one of the two sides fresh because we might need the pasta to adhere if you are making pasta with a filling. And remember, it's a good thing if you let it rest for a while, but and that's why if you don't have enough time, it's better to put some flour, but don't let it too long because otherwise it will break. Doesn't matter how much flour we put on top, first of all, because if it's too much, all you have to do is to put it in the center of your hand and you just shake it off.
So what's the best way to store this pasta? How long do you keep it?
Probably the best thing is you can keep it in the fridge, fresh pasta, I mean, you can keep it in the fridge for a few days, kind of 2-3 days, but otherwise you can just freeze the pasta and then from frozen throw it in boiling water. As you can see in the machine there are different slots. One is for tagliatelle, can you see this is the width? And the one here is the spaghetti. When the width changes, actually the name changes. So if you have the long pasta, so to speak, you know, if it's extremely thin, it's called angel hair, capelli d'angelo. Then you have spaghettini, then spaghetti, but then you go into vermicelli, bavette, tagliatelle, lasagnette, lasagne, and the difference is basically that the width is increasing, and as we said before, that depends on the type of dish that you are preparing, then the type of sauce really. Now, one thing that I want to show you now is how to use this machine just to cut our lovely pasta in tagliatelle. Once it's in the machine, it's very important, even when you are making the layer of pasta, that it's far from the edges and sort of perpendicular to the machine. Then what you do is like you are basically pulling it up. Can you see? So it doesn't matter how long they are, you can always, you know, like you have plenty of room to do that rather than pulling towards you, and then you let it dry. Now we are going to make spaghetti. So we tuck it in, as we said before, you roll it, and remember to take the pasta on the other side, and these are your homemade fresh spaghetti.
If you don't have a pasta machine, is there a way to make all this magic?
Well, first of all, if you don't have a pasta machine, get one. You will feel much better about yourself and get a good one, okay? But yeah, obviously, because you have to bear in mind that all these recipes were created in times without pasta machine, okay? So what you can do is, first of all, you don't need a pasta machine to flatten the dough. You can actually just do it on the table. And the nice thing when you do that using the rolling pin is that you don't need to do strips. You can actually just spread it all around the table as a big tablecloth made out of eggs and flour, and then you can cut strips like this, okay? Now, if you want to make tagliatelle, the easiest way and the traditional way would be actually to roll the tagliatelle like this, and then all you have to do is, with a good knife, you cut it like that, and as I said, it's up to you how broad you want them to be. And it's actually a good idea sometimes not to have the exact same width, so to introduce a bit of a variety in the texture, okay? So it comes as a spiral, okay? And you open it up, and when you do that, you kind of stretch it gently a little bit, okay? And then you place them like this. Can you see? Because this dough is quite elastic. As you can see, you will have all these differences in texture that actually are quite nice because makes your forkful much less boring. Different is good, okay? Then take it and put it like that, okay? Once you stretched it. And you can let it dry a little bit, and this is already ready for your sauce. It's actually craving your sauce at the moment. Well, fresh pasta is very easy to cook because Unlike a dry pasta, it doesn't absorb as much water, so that means that it doesn't go overcooked as easily, okay? Basically, what you do is, as soon as you see that the pasta is floating, then that tells you that it's ready. And if you leave it a little bit longer, it doesn't go overcooked because it doesn't absorb as much water as the dry pasta. Another nice thing about fresh pasta is that, as you can see, it's all coated in flour, and in fact it releases a lot of starch. That means that when it comes to dressing the pasta, you know, to preparing a sauce, it doesn't really matter what you put because it's gonna be always sort of creamy. You don't have a dry dish with fresh pasta because all the starch that is coming off the fresh pasta will mix with the juices of, let's say, you can toss it with courgette and prawns, for instance, you know, and those juices with the starch will create a coating over the pasta that will make it always creamy and flavorsome. Now, once you go through the trouble of making the pasta though, there is so much you can do, endless possibilities, to be honest with you. In this case though, I want to show you different formats where we are going to stretch the dough to a thinner layer, just because with the tagliatelle we do want a bite, but with other types of pasta we might have to have it a little bit thinner. Like for instance, this is a good sheet that we can use to make lasagne or cannelloni. The reason being that since we are not going to pre-cook it, it's better if it's thinner, so can absorb all the sauces and cook in them. Now, one that I want to show you is what we call garganelli. So what we do in that case is we cut the pasta like this, and then what we do is like we cut 2 squares like this. Now, if you don't have a gnocchi liner, you can use any sort of rough surface that you can think about in the house, you know, like just to roll the pasta over that, so that, as we said before, the external part of your pasta will have some carvings that will hold the sauce. It's a good idea to put a little bit of flour on top. Please note that we did put some flour underneath, but not on top, okay? I take the corner of my square and I put it over just a spoon, and I start to do the rolling. Now, when I do that, I press against the board, so there are carvings, and I keep on going like this. At a certain stage, I can even lift it and go like this, and then it's done. And this is your garganello. Another one that we can do is gnocchetti sardi, literally Sardinian little gnocchi. They are similar to gnocchi in the sense that we still use this board, that is the one that we use to make potato gnocchi, and it's a similar process. The only thing is like the dough has no potatoes at all, and it's used very much for meat sauces, rich sauces, where you need a bit of a texture. So there are the carvings outside, and it's a kind of a cave inside, so the sauce can go there and is also kept by the carving outside, okay? So we are going to show how to make farfalle. Mandy, say it.
Farfalle.
Wow, you are getting more and more Italian by the minute. Yes, that's it. It's butterfly pasta. Often we use it for salmon, for instance, and just a very simple sauce with salmon, white wine, and if you want a dash of cream. The way you do it is quite simple. You just cut a little rectangle, okay? And then all you have to do is to join these 2 extremities in the center, okay? I generally find it easy to leave my finger like that in the center and then just joining them like this. You can even reshape it a little bit more if you want by keeping this like this like this, and to make it even more kind of a butterfly pasta if you like, okay? And remember guys, it's very important that you don't have much flour on this side, but only on the other side, because otherwise it won't stick well, okay? Now we're going to make pasta with a filling, basically. And the reason why I don't say the name is because there are hundreds of names for that. You know, like, I mean, the most common one being probably ravioli and tortellini. We can start with the tortellini. Basically, what we do in that case is, once again, we start from kind of a square of pasta. We put a little bit of the filling in the center. This is just herbs and ricotta ricotta. Ricotta is a good medium for pasta with a filling because it's soft, so it's not a dry filling, but as you can see, I can work with it quite easily. It's not too running. Pasta with a filling is a way to celebrate an ingredient. So if you have prawns, if you have meat, mushroom, anything, you can make that as the filling of your pasta and celebrate it with a parcel of pasta all around. So we said tortellini. What you have to do is quite simple. You put this point to this point like this, and the idea is to close it up as a triangle, and then you walk towards the center like this, okay? So what you do there now is you have to close the tortellini. So you put your finger there and you put one point there, the other point there, and you press. Once you press, you kind of let it sit, and that's your tortellino. So now we go for the ravioli. In this case, there are different ways of doing the ravioli. One is like this. We put the filling in the center. I can put another layer on top. And as we did before, you walk all around it. It's important that there is a good rim of pasta all around the filling, because otherwise it will break, and then when the raviolo bursts, not only you lose the filling, but also the cooking of the pasta can be affected, because you can have this boiling water full of spinach and ricotta and whatever your filling is. Once you are happy with the shape, then you go with the cutter. Now, center the cutter well, and what you do is like you press down. When you press down, the first thing that you do is you get rid of all the dough that is outside. So basically the little raviolo inside is not aware of the earthquake that is happening inside, and this is your raviolo. So guys, once you go through the trouble of making this pasta dough, these are all the wonderful things that you can do, and many more.